All right, so we are going to write absolute value inequalities. Now, when you have an inequality, like greater than or less than, and you have an absolute value, you have to rewrite the equation before you can start to solve it. Some of them are going to be and problems, and some of them are going to be or problems. So we've got to take a look at the difference between the two and how to write the problem. Now, of course, then you would solve it and graph it, but for today, we are just going to concentrate on how to write it. And then once you move into your Google Slides, it's just, again, going to practice how to write it. And then next week, when we start on Monday, we're going to start on solving those equations, which will finish up our chapter. Absolute value inequalities is the last section in this chapter, so we'll be coming up on a review and a test. Also, this is the biggest thing in the first chapter of Algebra 2. So when you're getting started with Algebra 2, absolute value inequalities is what people have the most trouble with. So it's perfect that you're learning it right now. All right, so there are two types of absolute value equations, the and equation and the or equation. Now, we've been graphing and solving and and or equations. So this is just one little extra step. To determine which type you have, the absolute portion of the equation must be alone on the left-hand side, and there should be one number on the right-hand side. Less than signs looks like this. It can have an equal or not. They're going to be an and problem. I like to have people think of the word land. Now, you can remember that an L looks like this, sort of. I mean, tilted a little bit. Your left hand forms an L. Okay, there's your L. And if you think of the word land, you can remember that it is an and problem. Now, examples 1, 2, 3, 4, those are all land problems, so it's all an and. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to rewrite the equation. Now, I put in here, remember to keep both signs less than. Because really all you're going to do is you're going to write down the equation as you see it without the absolute value. So you're going to have the x minus 2, the less than or equal to 5. Now, absolute value, as you remember, is the distance from 0. So you have a positive and a negative version. So we have to make this 5 negative as well. So what we do is we put it in front, and now you've written your absolute value equation. Now, again, in the last 2 weeks, you've been solving these equations. So we'd add 2 to all sides. We know how to solve this. But again, for today, we're just practicing. How do you write the equation when you have an absolute value in there? So all you do is you write the absolute value down as you normally would, and in the front of it, you tack on a negative 5 less than or equal to. Now, if the equal to wasn't there, then you wouldn't put an equal to in the front. So they're both going to be the same. Okay? Now, looking at example 2, it looks kind of the same as example 1, except it's backwards. The absolute value is on the right and the number is on the left. Remember, look at the top. I said the absolute value portion must be alone on the left, and there should be a number on the right. So we have to flip this around. Well, to do that, you just have to remember what the mouth is eating. The mouth is eating the 6. So if you flip these over, the mouth has to still eat the 6. Okay? Now that the mouth is eating the 6, you can say, oh, this is a less than problem. This is an and problem. Okay? Because if you were looking at it this way, you'd think that it was an or problem. It's not or because it's not set up correctly. So you don't look at this one, you rewrite it and see that it's a land problem. Now, it's just like number 1. So you take the absolute value away, and in the front, you tack on another less than or equal to and a negative 6, and you're done. So it's negative 6 less than or equal to 2x plus 4 less than or equal to 6. All right, let's look at number 3. Number 3 is a less than problem, so it is going to be a land problem. Oh, but take a look. It's not simplified yet. You have absolute value plus 2 is less than 8, and it says that the absolute value must be alone on the left-hand side before you can determine anything. So the first thing we have to do is subtract 2 from both sides. We have to get that 2 out of there. So we end up with x minus 1 is less than, well, 8 minus 2 is 6. Now we're ready. Now we can see the less than and the and problem, and now we can rewrite our answer or our equation. So you have the x minus 1 is less than 6 without the absolute value, and then you tack on a less than negative 6 on the front. So you have negative 6 is less than x minus 1 is less than 6. All right, let's look at example 4. Now, in example 4, again, your absolute value is not all by itself. So the first thing you want to do is get that absolute value all by itself. So you subtract 1 from both sides. Now, if you're having trouble determining what it is you would do first, like do we subtract 1 from both sides or do we divide by 3? Think about a problem that looked like this. If you had a problem 3x plus 1 equals 10, the first step you would do is subtract 1. Well, that's the exact same thing as what we were doing here. It's just got a whole lot of fancy stuff in it with absolute values and inequalities. Okay? So, the next step you're going to do is you're going to divide by 3. You need that absolute value all by itself. So now that we are here, we can see, all right, we got our absolute value. We have our less than or equal to, so we know we have a land problem. And now we can write our solution. So it's negative 3, less than or equal to the x plus 2, less than or equal to the 3. Okay, remember the x plus 2 and the less than or equal to 3 are already there. You put the negative in front with another less than or equal to. So that's how you're going to work land problems. Those are all less than. Notice, all less than. So let's take a look at greater than. Greater than signs, they go this way, form or problems, and are written as such. Remember to flip the inequality when you make the second equation with the negative number. We'll talk a little bit about that. Let's look at example 5. Now, I know that this is an or problem. How do I know? Well, it's not a land problem. So if it's not land, it's got to be the other one. Well, the other one means that it's then or. So how do I write those or problems? Well, you know the word or is going to be in it. The first thing you're going to do is just write x minus 5 is greater than or equal to 4. You're just going to write the equation. Now, the second equation is going to have a negative 4. But this is what I meant right here. Flip your inequality. So you've got to change the direction of your inequality. So you're going to have x minus 5 is less than or equal to negative 4. So there's your or in the middle, and there are your two equations. So the first one is just like it normally is. X minus 5 is greater than or equal to 4. Notice the only thing I did to the absolute value side is drop the absolute value. I didn't change any signs. I didn't change any numbers. I just dropped the absolute value sign. And then I had greater than or equal to 4. And then I said or, drop the absolute value, x minus 5. I flipped the inequality to make it less than or equal to. And I changed to be a negative 4. All right, number 6. Number 6. If you look at it the way it is, you're like, ooh, that's less than, that's land. But it's not, because look, your absolute value is on the wrong side. So the first thing you need to do is rewrite this so that your absolute value is on the correct side. Also notice that the mouth is eating the absolute value, okay? The arrow is pointing to the 3. So we don't look at that one, we look at this one and we say, oh, it's greater than, so it's an or problem. So when we're writing these or problems, you're going to write x plus 4, x plus 4 is greater than 3, or the x plus 4, and then you're going to flip the inequality and change that sign. So x plus 4 is less than negative 3. Now notice there was no equal sign, so I didn't have an equal sign in either of these, and I have my or in between in my two equations. All right, let's look at example 7. With example 7, this 3 is in the way. So the first thing we got to do is move that 3. So we get the absolute value of 2x plus 1 is greater than 7. Okay. Now, you see that it's greater than, so it's going to be an or problem. So we write 2x plus 1 is greater than 7, or 2x plus 1 is less than negative 7. So I just changed my sign, flipped the inequality. Now, number 8. Number 8 is actually quite tricky. So we want to look at number 8. Number 8 looks like it's going to be a land problem. But let's go ahead and solve first. Get this absolute value all by itself first, and then let's see what it really is. So the first thing you're going to do is add your 4. Okay? Negative 3, the absolute value of negative x plus 3 is less than or equal to, that'll be a negative 6. Okay? So I added my 4 first. It's almost as though I had a problem that looked like this. Okay, if you had a problem that looked like that, you would add your 4 first. Same thing going here because you're trying to isolate this absolute value. So your next step is to divide by a negative 3. Ooh, when you divide by a negative and you've got inequalities, what do you have to do with that inequality? You have to flip it around and then divide. So negative 6 divided by negative 3 is a positive 2. Well, now you're all set. Because remember at the beginning it said the absolute value had to be on the left all by itself, and then the number had to be on the right. Now you can see that it's actually an OR problem. Okay? Now it's easy. Now we just write it as we see it. Notice I'm not changing any signs. All I'm doing is taking rid of the absolute value. And then I do the OR. I do the exact same thing. Not changing anything, just getting rid of the absolute value. But I got to flip my inequality and change the sign of my number. All right, you're ready for the Google Slides. What you're going to be doing on Google Slides is you're going to be creating these answers right here. So I'm going to give you an equation, and then I'm going to give you a whole bunch of little tiles. So like I'll give you a little tile that says negative x plus 3. And I'll give you a little tile that has a less than or equal, and a little tile that has a 2. And what you're going to do is you're going to drag and drop them into the box in the right order. I'll also have a little tile with the thing OR, and you'll drag them in there. Now, I have more boxes than you need. So, for example, the problem might be AND, but I might have an OR in there. You just don't use an OR if it's not an OR equation. So you're just dragging and dropping, and then you're going to submit, and I'll give you all sorts of comments and answers on your Google slide. All right, great. Have a wonderful day.